Hello. Um, so we're going to be doing some of Ghost of You today. I know the what it said on the schedule was just sort of assorted Yuri visual novels. We're going to be doing a little bit of Ghost of You just for about 30 or so minutes. Well, maybe not 30, but just for a little bit before we swap over into playing the expression Amarillo, I believe is how it's pronounced. So we're gonna switch over to that one in about like 45 minutes to an hour. This one particular game is quite special to me, so I wanted to put it in there before we got into the rest of what I have for today's stream. It might be a little bit of a longer one than usual, but I mean an hour is a little bit short, but that is the usual. Uh, anyway, we're gonna go ahead and jump right in to this. So the first room that I'm gonna go ahead and take a peek into is the sounding room. You decide to check out the sounding room. Are you sure about this, darling? Alyssa asks, and she can see as well as you that you can feel that you have concern and dread written all over your face. You were incredibly rattled by that place even before we were in this situation. What will you say? Alyssa blushes again and chuckles. I didn't realize you could make me so happy in the middle of all this madness, libretto. Did you hit your head especially hard or something? You laugh and shake your head. Alyssa nods with a smile. Well, I'm really relieved that you're all right too, you know, she exclaims. I was so worried for you when you were knocked out in that chair. I honestly didn't know whether you were going to wake up or not. What will you say? I'm going to flirt just a little bit. You feel as though honesty is the only way to be in this situation, given that you both almost died, and you know that the statement is a true one, no matter how slightly embarrassed you are to say it. For all of your situations, for everything you go through, it was true. You are always able to come back to Alyssa. You know you are, and she knows it too. Through the death of your mother, the breakup with Mona, and everything in between, Alyssa has always been the one that has held you in your time of need, without any prodding or question. Upon hearing such a statement, you can see that Alyssa is visibly touched. She smiles at you gently, the same familiar peace of mind that you can get in this place, and she squeezes your hand. And I would have always brought you back to me too. I always do. I always want to be the anchor that keeps you chained to normality. Alyssa can't look at you while she talks. You squeeze her hand in turn. You know how much you mean to her. With a nod, you open the two doors slowly. As you begin to push the ornate doors open, you see nothing but a seemingly unending darkness. It's dark? Alyssa asks, and you have to admit that you are in a surprised agreement. Why is it so dark? This is a room that focuses on electrics, after all. Alyssa's hands begin scanning the walls for a light switch, rubbing her palms along the wallpaper, and you are tentative. Did not mean to do that. You are tentative to let her go into the darkness of a place like this at all. A light switch should be the closest to the door, Alyssa mumbles to herself, rubbing along the walls. Aha! With the sound of a startling click, the lights above flicker on with two blinks, illuminating a seemingly empty room. You aren't surprised by that. You know full well that you aren't going to get to see whoever is running this place until the very last breath of this journey you have been forced upon. As you step inside, the first thing you notice is something that you find startlingly simple, which is that this room is tiny. For a place that intimidated you so much earlier, you feel almost foolish seeing the size of it up close. The second things you notice are all minute details. Whilst the room is small, it is almost entirely gray. Gray walls, gray carpet, and full of too many chairs for the kind of room that it is. Between the electrical boards and the mechanisms that you don't recognize, the room is a mess. You try to ignore the fact that you think there are flecks of blood on the wall nearest to you. The tables are made of wood, covered in bits of forgotten paper, and there looks to be lots of technological equipment that you don't recognize. And I right-clicked instead of clicked. As you walk over and start scanning the sheets of paper, you cannot find anything of any particular use at a first glance. It all looks like pieces of torn-out instruction manuals. There are electrical pieces of equipment dotted around the room, too, sophisticated-looking technology that you've never seen before. The last thing you notice, and perhaps the most unsettling, is that the window to the side of you is overlooking out to somewhere that you cannot see because the room it is looking out to is also concealed under complete darkness. Is everywhere going to be like this? Alyssa states into the open, peering into the blackness of the window. Surely not, right? The lobby wasn't like this outside. What will you say? Hmm, they did, Alyssa mumbles to herself, stroking her chin. But what if it was hypothetical? They might mean that they wanted us to see the rest of the hall rather than just the main insertion. I can't see anything from up here. Where will you look? I'm gonna look at the documents on the table. You turn your attention to the documents scattered around the various bits of furniture around you and behind you as you stand in the middle of the sounding room that once terrified you in so many different ways. What kind of a mess is this? So disorganized. Alyssa chides to nobody in particular, but you can't help agreeing with her. The mess is a strangely bombastic one, as though somebody came in here and threw these all over the place deliberately. Knowing that somebody else is pulling the strings makes you very suspicious of their motives, and you already want to know what every one of these papers says. Let's see, Alyssa says, kneeling down against the fabric of her skirt as she picks up various sheets of paper. Blank pieces of sheet music, various old pieces of newspaper. Alyssa promptly stands up quickly and moves to another area of the room, whilst you shuffle the papers at your feet some more. As you proceed, the papers become more and more mundane. Blank pieces of paper, flyers for the opening night. Your small town received a ton of these, let alone seeing them strewn across the floor here. But eventually, at the very bottom of the pile, you come across an instruction manual. You pick it up and skim through it. Switch code blue, red, purple, green. Symphony Hall, light. Switch code green, yellow, red, purple. Sound room, light. Color-coded switches, Alyssa says, raising an eyebrow. I see. This could prove to be very useful for us, libretto. You acquire the instruction manual. The once advanced technology at your side doesn't seem as scary anymore, but instead it is what lies in the darkness of the hall that now has room to scare you even further. You could put the lights on if you wanted to now, but is that something you really want to do? It is. I definitely want to see what's going on. Where will you look? The electrical equipment. With the instruction manual in hand, you return to the electrical board. Perhaps you can finally switch on the lights at the Symphony Hall now that you have read around a little more. Alyssa places a hand on your shoulder as she stands behind you, her sandy-colored hair tickling your cheek. Right, so we've got the correct combination of colors right here. Do you need a refresher on the codes before we go ahead with this? What will you say? A reminder would be great. Alyssa flips the manual open with a hum and scans her eyes across the page. Let's see. It says the code for the Symphony Hall light is blue, red, purple, and green. BRPG. BRPG. Blue, red, purple, green. You heard a beep coming from the keyboard, and you hear an ominous rumbling coming from somewhere. It looks as though there is a light on where the stage is supposed to be. Something moving around behind it? Alyssa looks at you with an expression of discomfort written across her face. You can see that she looks frightened by the sound that just happened, and you are both wondering the same thing. Did you just disturb something behind the curtain of the stage below? We need to hurry and get out of here, Alyssa insists. Alyssa takes one hasty step forward before recoiling backwards in utter horror, a hand clamped over her mouth to stifle a scream. Alarmed, you turn to look at her. She points towards the lone window in the room with a shaky hand. Libretto, what on earth is that? Hanging upside down against the window with a maniacal smile and unhinged. Hello. Hi. How you doing? With a maniacal smile and unhinged, manic eyes is a woman, her hair matted with blood and hanging down from gravity's pull. Her smile is cold, vacant, little more than reactionary to yours and Alyssa's screams, and you can see that she is holding herself upside down against a small ledge atop the sounding room that protrudes out over the upper circle. You realize with a chill that she was the source of the condensation, breathing, panting against the glass window, watching you. What the hell is this? Alyssa exclaims in sheer horror as the two of you look out to the symphony hall below, trying your best to move on from the creature at your right. What is going on? There are blood smears against the window, and that, much to your disgust, is not the worst of it. At the lights flicker in the symphony hall in sporadic, unforgiving flashes of light and darkness, Alyssa lets out a choked sob at the sight, and you feel a nausea line your stomach. Blood is everywhere before your eyes. And when you say everywhere, you mean everywhere, like a sea of red before you. It was clear to see that it had stained the carpets and the walls, and terrible, heart-wrenching smears where people had clawed their way up, only to be dragged back down. The only sense of normalcy at all was now coming from one of the eerie paintings earlier. Do I look horizontally squished? I've gotten that one before, and I'm not sure why that is. It's kind of weird. Because I mean, by all means, I shouldn't be squished horizontally. Because the adjustment for the source, like it, when you change the scaling, it does it like you can't just go one way. It goes both horizontally and vertically. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm definitely gonna see what I can do. Boop boop boop. And for a moment, I will disappear, and then I will reappear. And then I'll start moving. And then this will start moving. Hmm. Still a little squished. That's odd. But yeah, I've definitely been told that before, and I've been looking around to see exactly what it was. Um, yeah, not quite sure though. You feel horrified at having to look at all of this whilst being stared at by this woman, her eyes ravenous for your mortality. The stage before you is broken. It looks to be destroyed by some kind of large force smashing into the floorboards. Yeah, we'll definitely chitter chatter about it. Thursday sounds like a good time. While the curtains are completely shredded behind, none of this looks like the work of anything human, and strangely looked rather mechanical in assault. The knife marks looked as though they are from blades, not hands. As you lean forwards in an anxious, gripping fear, you can see that there is nobody that you know from the symphony itself laying on the stage. You feel a tiny, wispy breath of relief, for that is nothing compared to the sight of so many bodies strewn about like they were little more than trash. The instruments were strewn across the stage's poor excuse for floorboards, and battered and broken into tiny pieces. Alyssa covers her mouth in abhorrence at the sight of that alone, and as the light finally and entirely flickers on, you see every last body that the hall has to offer. Jesus Christ! Alyssa exclaims, as pale and horrified as you are. She stumbles back slightly, and you hold her in your arms as she steadies herself, not much stronger for any of this than she is. Even with the woman hanging down looking at the two of you, the bodies were the worst part about all of this. You feel utterly sick to your stomach seeing any of them in such a state, seeing such a cold, callous disregard for human life, bodies bent out of shape in their seats, bones protruding out of the surface of torn skin, and insides hanging out on the outside of where they should have been kept. The bile rises into your throat upon seeing such a gory entourage of disrespect. Heads were removed from their bodies, torn off, which makes you feel even more nauseous. You see a woman that is struggling beneath some of the debris, and you wonder if perhaps you had been able to wake up somewhere else if you could have helped her. I'm going to puke, Alyssa exclaims as you hold her in your arms, and you can see that her appearance is gray. How can how can someone do this? What will you say? No kidding, Alyssa says in a horrified, shaky agreement, and her hands curl around your arms gently. She buries her face in your neck, unwanting to remind herself of the appearance from the woman hanging down before the window. Thank God you're here with me. Holding Alyssa warmly to your chest, you are equally as happy to have her here with you. Being able to keep her safe with you is all you could want right now, especially given that you know, visibly even, that there is a greater danger out there. The woman over the speaker was not kidding when she told you of great dangers. You hoped that there wasn't going to be any more death, but as you look up into Alyssa's comforting, loving blue eyes, you know that is a futile hope for the future. My, aren't you two getting cozy amidst the fallout? That voice. A distorted, familiar tone reaches your ears, and Alyssa looks up to the speaker with you in horror. What do you want? She screams up at it, and you scowl as hard as you can in an attempt to fly the daggers from your eyeballs. The woman at the other end of the distortion laughs triumphant in her attempt to rattle both of you, and you hear her leaning back in her chair once more. I want this, she replies simply. I want your anger, all of your despair. My rivers of reason run deeper than a no-brained, one-tracked mind dimwit like you could even understand. Isn't that right, libretto? You know that this runs deeper than just mindless violence, don't you? What will you say? What do you want? The distorted voice laughs to herself, a myriad of triumph and disdain ringing in your ears as she cackles. Hearing a cackle through a distorted voice is something that has now become one of your least favorite things in the world. You'll find out soon enough, she states plainly, and believe me, I intend on making sure that you know. Oh, thank you. It is a little bit of ASMR horror reading, since visual novels and this particular text-based game requires a lot of reading. Yeah, I imagined that would sort of be the vibe. With the sound of falling debris behind you in the hall, and the knowledge that this woman is taking great pleasure in your suffering, you and Alyssa stand tall, angrily defiant, and reassured from the company of each other as the voice begins to speak once more. You feel angry about her goading, full of resentment and contempt for someone that you don't even know. But it certainly sounds as though she knows both you and Alyssa. But how? Libretto, the voice begins, and you feel a chill run up your spine at the personal touch of her saying your name. Ugh, libretto, the way your name sounds in my mouth. It makes me want to vomit. You grit your teeth. What will you say? I hope you choke on it. Oops. I want you to. That's not what I even clicked. I want you to suffer. I want you to suffer. Thank you. I want you to suffer in ways that you couldn't imagine you'd even suffer, feel pain that no other human has ever felt, and survive all the way to the very end so I can choke the life out of you myself. The voice's microphone clicks off once again. With the disappearance of the voice and the worried exchange of looks between Alyssa and yourself, you turn your attention to a rapping on the window. Thank you, Minty. The madwoman has begun to tap against the glass with her knuckles. The taps grow louder and louder still. You begin to notice that the glass is cracking, and she shows no sign of stopping. Libretto, Alyssa asks, frozen to the spot and unable to remove her gaze from the woman before you both. Libretto, You know what she's going to say. The crunch of the glass is growing louder and louder. The cracks are spreading across the surface. The woman's smile is growing more and more manic. Her fist shatters through the glass, and with a scream being dragged from your lips into a whimper as it dies on your tongue, you see that her hand is torn up from the shards, loose pieces of flesh hanging down like ivy, and blood spurting from all of the cuts she now has. Run, Alyssa declares, in panic. You must escape before she manages to create a bigger entrance. The woman behind the glass begins to headbutt the open surface, and you run at full pelt towards the door. Just as you and Alyssa arrive back outside in the hallway, you slam the door shut tight, thankful that the door is not a push-open set of doors on the outside, and you hold them close with a fierce contempt. Hold them closed, Libretto, Alyssa says with a grunt and a struggle, the two of you losing the fight against the woman's strength behind the doorway. Hold them closed. You look around desperately for something, anything, that could hold this door shut. One wrong misstep here, and you, Alyssa, could both meet a gruesome end. You notice the door will be blocked with chunks of garbage. You turn your frantic glance over to the huge chunks of rock preventing you from going down the stairs, and Alyssa, trained in her perception of you over the years, immediately agrees to your wordless suggestion. Yes, Libretto, good idea. Some of them you know full well that you cannot possibly lift, some of them are just too heavy, but the other pieces, they look big enough to lift and close enough to move in quick succession before the door. You nod to yourself and Alyssa at your side, who grimaces at you hopefully, struggling to hold the door closed. You make as much quick work of this as you possibly can, grabbing the rocks one by one, much to the scream of your back, and place them in a pile before the door. The woman makes a screaming noise of anguish and utter disbelief that she can no longer get out, as even though these are too heavy for her to move. You did it, darling, Alyssa exclaims in joy and clasps her hands together. Thank goodness! What a relief! That was an awfully close call. I can't imagine what would have happened if you tried anything else. Not that we had many other options, naturally. My boastful strength was what carried us, you understand. She winks at you at the end of her sentence, and a grain of truth in her line, and you chuckle to yourself as the two of you hug after such an ordeal. Alyssa breathes a sigh of relief, rubbing your back and holding you tightly in her arms. Thank God you're all right, Libretto. After such an intense ordeal, you're almost relieved to stumble back into the lobby of the upper floor. Glad we got out of that in one piece. Where do you think we should try next, Libretto? The instrument room. You decide to investigate the instrument room. The instrument room. I wonder if that's exactly what it says on the tin, Alyssa says in contemplation. I can't imagine it being much more complex than that in a symphony hall. Delicious water. You nod in agreement and decide to make your way over to the mahogany door separating you from what you assume will be an endless amount of instruments. Ready? Alyssa asks. You nod and push the large doors open, and as the door swings open, you're instead greeted with a rather peculiar sight. What? Alyssa half asks in disbelief as you step into the room. What? There are numerous amounts of musical instruments, just as you expected, but there are also surgical ones strewn about the room as well. Hmm, surgical instruments? Alyssa asks in disbelief, and you feel her hand coil around yours. I don't like this. Why is this mixed in with musical instruments? If this is someone's idea of a double entendre joke, it isn't funny. Alyssa steps inside first, her boots' quiet footsteps onto the plush of the blue of the carpet, staring on in bewilderment at the glint of various metals and irons before you. There are glass cases that have the surgical instruments inside them, completely transparent, solid in nature, and strangely making it seem as though the instruments contained within are somewhat precious. Above each box is a poster, a different part of a human anatomy drawn up in an analytical fashion. You see the crude pinks and reds of flesh and blood staring you in the face. Finally, against the cerulean of the wallpaper, there are various different instruments, the theme of surgical and musical ongoing, mounted against each other in the walls. The most prominently hung instruments are, eerily to you, a flute and a violin. The flute is glinting above the doorway, polished and refined, whilst in the center of the room the violin looks scratched and unkempt. You wince at seeing something you love dearly so destroyed. A flute and a violin, eh? Alyssa says, and you can see that she is visibly rattled by seeing something she so deeply cares about used as little more than fixtures. God, that violin's seen better days. The thing it looks like it's been through. I wish I could take care of that violin. Alyssa pauses, a distant, somber look suddenly present in her eyes. You peer over at her curiously and squeeze her hand. What will you say? I'll reassure her. Upon hearing your words of reassurance, Alyssa nods in agreement, smiling at you weakly as she does so. Thank you, darling. That's not the button I wanted to press. I know. I know we'll get out of here in one piece, and that you can be rest assured of it. I've anything to say about it. I butchered that one. Alongside Alyssa's melancholy, you can see that guilt is written all over her face. You can easily surmise that she probably feels guilty about the events of tonight, being that she was the one who invited you here in the first place. You decide that you will confront these feelings of hers later, and focus on regrouping with your peers in the meantime. As you bring your gaze down from the haunting wall mounts to observe the room properly, you get a much better grip of your surroundings, as well as something else slightly ominous before you. That's still the wrong button. There are several chests around the room. They are all placed in different corners, with differently shaped crude paper signs poking out of the back, all with varying stages of tragedy masks. What on earth are these? Alyssa asks, and wanders towards one of the chests at the far end of the room. Ugh, no wonder there are tragedy masks here. Theatrical performances indeed. They've always creeped me out, ever since I was little. There are two tables on either side of the room, low, glass-topped coffee tables, and dainty white chairs to complement. This room is as expensive and delicate as it is alarming, and you feel as though one of the scalpels that are placed in the glass boxes around the room could fly out and slice you at any moment. As well as the several chests, you find that under the glimmering light of the chandelier, the constant glinting off of all of the varying metal surfaces has been forcing you into a squint. As you rub your eyes, Alyssa folds her arms. What do you think, sweetheart? Should we open the chests or look at something else altogether? Alright, thank you. You have a good day, Minty. Look around the room. You decide to check the room once more. Alright, Alyssa says in a contemplative agreement and walks around the room alongside you. Let's check this all out to make sure we're not walking into a death trap. Alyssa takes one half of the mysterious room, while you take the other, the alarming sight of razor-sharp surgery items staring you in the face. You fumble around the desk drawers, and the instruments themselves that are not of surgical nature catch your eye. You look high and low, but you cannot appear to find anything of any help to you, and even then, you aren't really sure what you're looking for. You call over to Alyssa, asking if she hasn't found anything worthwhile alongside. Not so far, darling. This room appears to be particularly sparse despite its theatrics, doesn't it? She states with a disappointed sigh. Perhaps we'll be luckier in our quest to find the answers outside of the room. Leave the room. Let's look somewhere else. You decide to retrace your steps and leave the instrument room for later. Which room do you want to enter? The layover room. You and Alyssa decide to check out the door bearing the sign, Layover Room. Layover? I assume this is where musicians must stay overnight, should they not be able to get a hotel or something, Alyssa muses, though to be honest, I'm still unsure why this symphony hall was ever refurbished in the way it is. And so suddenly at that. I remember when our little town was bustling when we were young, but it hasn't been that way in years. I mean, you know how we are, Libretto, out here in the middle of rural Italy. We're practically a village at this point. Why even bother to refurbish this hall? You paused for thought alongside Alyssa, who was making many noises of contemplation. You had to hand it to her in agreement. It all made no sense. What will you say? Alyssa laughs sadly and nods with an anguished pain. No kidding. I think I shall be working off the karma for inviting you here for the rest of my life. As you turn the door's handle, swinging it open with a slow creak, you are not surprised to see the sight before you. It is indeed, as Alyssa and yourself suspected, a room for musicians to lay over if they have no place to stay. Coming out to the rural parts of the country was always worrisome enough. Not having access to a payphone or fresh water was the most prominent in everyone's time of need. But having some place safe to stay, or having the ability to at the very least be amongst your like-minded peers in a similar situation, was always a growing comfort. You thought fondly of your mother and how she talked of her summers away as a young girl with your grandmother. Something about this room, despite its grubbiness and disheveled appearance, takes you back to your childhood. A lazy summer of nondescript years, during Ferragosto, where you and Alyssa would lay around in the shade of your back garden. Your mother would be reading one of her favorite books back at the living room's table. You remember both of you and Alyssa gorging yourself on too much of your mother's baked goods and laying with your head on Alyssa's stomach. "We're going to get married when we're older, aren't we?" Alyssa said to you this particular year. "I'll take care of you, libretto." You remember laughing with her after she said that, and watching the fireworks of Ferragosto shoot up in the dusk from afar. Stood in the middle of this room, somewhere horrific, it is a wonderful memory. You look at Alyssa with a loving gaze. Alyssa lets out a small but noticeable sigh, and she flusters with a shy laugh. "What is it, libretto? I've never really seen that look before." You shake your head and chuckle to yourself. Alyssa's concerned expression softens, and she grins at you. "Were you poking fun at me in your head? I recognize that look when you remember something embarrassing that I did. What will you say?" The blush creeping up Alyssa's cheeks overtakes them entirely, turning her face a bright flush of red. She rubs the back of her neck with a soft giggle and turns away from you. The shy grin across her face is hard to miss, despite her efforts to hide it. "What in the world made you think of that at a time like this, libretto? There's no way I could ever forget about that, though. That whole day. It was nothing short of perfect, if you ask me. The smell of fireworks still reminds me of it." Alyssa's eyes finally meet yours, and she smiles at you. "Summer's at your apartment. I'm glad that it makes you think of something that was such a happy memory for me. I love to remember those times, too." At the end of her sentence, Alyssa sounds vaguely wistful. You look at her sympathetically. "Simpler times, weren't they?" she says in rhetoric, and looks up at the landscape paintings hung around the room. "Times before school, before Mona arrived in our town, before all of, well, everything. What will you say?" "My happiest memory," Alyssa repeats as bashfully as she rubs the back of her neck. "Oh, goodness, I don't know." You can see from the way that she writhes as she stands in the middle of this seemingly safe room, pulling at the edges of her skirt over her thigh-high tights, that she is fully aware of what her happiest memory is. You grin coyly at her, and she blushes. "Don't you go looking at me like that." She chuckles and cups her face. "Oh, come on, don't make me say it." You laugh to yourself and grin at her. You have an inkling of what her happiest memory is, but hearing her say it is always something that makes you think Alyssa is even more adorable. She turns away from you to idly walk over to the room's paintings, her hands held behind her back. "Do you remember the Harvest Festival a few years ago?" What will you say?" Alyssa giggles to herself and turns to face you over her shoulder, her light hair cupping her face with a cheeky smile. "I'm glad," she exclaims, and you smile at her brightly. "That was my happiest memory, libretto, just getting to spend time with you on your own at a festival. I remember it so well, you know. Just before Mona came to town, you and I went on a night out to the festival. Wonderful time it was. What a wonderful time it was, right?" You smiled, tucking a strand of your hair behind your ear, and nodded in agreement. Even amidst the horrors of the Symphony Hall, Alyssa's infectious enthusiasm is still carrying your morale high on its shoulders. The festival was a tradition in your small town, and the harvest that followed from the farmers' fields was always, usually, a bountiful one, regardless of spiritual belief or otherwise. But on that particular year, you remember that the harvest the farmers brought back was one that was full of food. Your town was so overjoyed to have so much local produce, as well as extra trade-ins from the bigger stores in the bigger cities. This particular year, the festival was more bustling than it had ever been. You remember, as you and Alyssa combed the streets of your small town, that you too had a good time. Alyssa held your hand the entire way around, fearful to get lost, though you would always chuckle and tell her she could work her way back home in a cinch if she really wanted to. She would shake her head and insistently hold your hand for longer. The most prominent thing you remember about that night is a woman coming up to Alyssa to try and charm her. You could see that Alyssa wasn't interested, but she was too polite to decline. You stepped in and said that she was your girlfriend to shoo her away, and the woman was apologetic before leaving. Remember when you saved me from having to go on an awkward date? Alyssa chuckles. I'll never forget it personally. What will you say? Alyssa blushes and fumbles amongst her fingertips. Libretto, she says bashfully. You're at your most charming during the middle of this awful place, are you? No wonder I've never seen this side to you. After your brief reprieve of reminiscing, Alyssa and you stand in the midst of the layover room in all of its glory. You aren't really sure what the term glory should really entail, but you're pretty sure it isn't this. This room is so grubby, Alyssa says with a disgusted look on her face. Safe room or not, was this hall ever even refurbished? It looks like it had no intention of housing anyone, if you ask me. The beds around you are all unclean, grubby in their appearance. This place apparently didn't fully escape the madness of outside, but it looks as though whatever was in here has gone now. Large, long claw marks scrape up the chest of drawers before you, with chipped and splintered chestnut protruding out from the surface. Torn doilies and linen lay ripped in a pile in the corner, whilst plastic plants were upturned, their artificial soil spread across the carpet, trodden into the small spaces between the floorboards. Alyssa's eyes meet hesitantly with the scratches against the chest of drawers, and she hovers her fingertips over them gently. Claw marks? She asks, and turns to you with a slightly haunted expression. Is there anything in the world that can make these kind of marks, even? You know, besides larger mountain cats, of which I assume did not want to attend the symphony? As you explore a little more, you begin to notice various things within the room. To the left of the beds is a smaller room with the door slightly ajar, and you begin to assume that it is more than likely the bathroom's entrance. There is a strange smell coming from out of the door, and you feel yourself hesitant to explore that place any more than it needs to be. The second thing you notice in quick succession, succession. A music box atop the chest of drawers, a closet to your right with the doors open, and inside empty pieces of paper poking out from beneath a pillow, and finally something glinting off of the lights in the corner of the room. What will you do? You decide to pull out the pieces of paper from beneath the pillow. You walk over firmly against the grubbiness of the carpet, and, reaching out with your thumb and forefinger, you pull out the sheets from beneath. What is this? Alyssa asks, curious. Half a diary entry, is it? You turn the sheet over properly, and your eyes begin scanning it. Will you read it? 8th of August, 1947. Fishy going on. My bandmates say I'm... No indication this place was first paying job and screams in the night. I don't know how else to describe. Mechanical whirring keeps driving me crazy. I feel like I'm being watched. The last line chills you to the core. The small pieces of their mind that you can read are making you feel incredibly uneasy. The description of something suspicious, the screams, the mechanical whirring, what was going on here. You also had a sinking feeling that they were more than likely on the right track, all about being watched. You shiver as you remember your walk up to the Symphony Hall, what seems like a lifetime ago now. I don't like this, Alyssa says with a cold tinge to her wording, not one little bit. It appears that you and Alyssa are not the first ones here to think that something is not right about the Songbird Symphony Hall. What will you do? Pick up the item in the corner. You see an item glinting off of the lights above in the corner, and your eye is immediately drawn to it. You walk over to the corner itself, kneeling down to pick it up between your thumb and forefinger. You are pleasantly surprised to find that it is a memorabilia pin. A small, grinning devil resides embossed in copper, childish, and animated in its charm. You know the brand of it, Live Lucy. This is from a Sunday morning comic strip that has run in the newspapers since the early 20s. Your mother was quite the fan of it. She never missed a single strip if she could help it, and you smile at the memories of her animatedly reading the comics to you before you could read yourself. You slip it into your pocket. What do you have there, libretto? You tell Alyssa about the pen and its connotations to you. She smiles. You and your mother always did have a penchant for the creative, didn't you? I remember this little guy, I think, Alyssa says, smiling. I wonder why a pen like this is here. What will you do? Guess we're going to go look in the bathroom. You have decided to explore the bathroom, and I have decided to take a sip of water. Libretto, are you sure, darling? Alyssa asks cautiously. It seems awfully ominous in that room. I think we're safe in here, but that's not to say we won't be met with unpleasant sights. I have a horribly sinking feeling that we're to be met with many unpleasantries throughout our time here. Alyssa taps her chin. Wait, that's not even a word, is it? You're pretty cute, Alyssa. Alyssa flushes a rose pink against her cheeks and shakes her head, taken aback by your sudden charm. You aren't sure what it is about her right now, whether it's the familiarity of having someone you love as much as her in this place, or that she's simply just more attractive somehow now, but you can't resist teasing her a little. You grin, and she can't help but beam as she tells you off with a faux, unamused tone. You need to stop being so lovely to me, libretto, or we're going to keep getting thoroughly distracted throughout all of this place. Feeling as though you've teased Alyssa enough for now, you decide, perhaps against your better judgment, to explore the bathroom. Alright, though I'm not entirely sure what we're going to find in a place like that, Alyssa says hesitantly, and the two of you walk towards the door. Ready? You nod, and Alyssa pushes the door open tentatively. This room has smelled terrible, even without the door open. You both take a deep breath and try to brace yourselves. Here we go, Alyssa says, squinting in apprehension. As the door creaks open, the air the two of you are trying to keep in is let out suddenly in a gasp, aghast against the horror before you. Before you is a full bathtub of blood. You cannot tell where the source came from, or what it even was, but along the white honeycomb patterned tiles of the floor beneath you, you can see that there are bloody fingerprints where someone was dragged, and from, in a futile hope, trying to claw themselves up off the floor. Jesus, Alyssa exclaims with a horror shooting up both of your spines. This is really something, isn't it? What's going on? You know you and Alyssa cannot answer that question, but you can't help but say it all the same. Alyssa shakes her head in utter disbelief as the two of you stare at the source of the stench, and Alyssa closes her eyes. I don't know, darling. I just don't know. As you look inside the bathroom, you see something that you know may be pivotal to you after all. Four tragedy masks are painted against the white wall in what you know must be nothing other than blood. The smears of the markings are consistent with what you would imagine painting with such a sticky substance would be like in its congealment, and you feel as though this is illustrating a pattern. What the devil is this? Alyssa asks. Tragedy masks? The appearance of them is as follows: elation, grief, sadness, happiness. Are those supposed to be the order for something? Alyssa says, scratching her head and placing her free hand over her mouth. Ugh, this stench is so distracting. You decide to take down a mental note of the order of the scrawling, and despite your best efforts, you fail at not gagging from the copper stench wafting up your nose from the bathtub below. Alyssa coughs from behind her hand. Let's get out of here, she pleads, and you nod in agreement. It appears as though the bathroom was useful for something after all. What will you do? Nothing. Let's leave. Having fully exhausted the room of things it could give you, you begin to see that there is nothing left. Alyssa rests her hands on the curves of her hips and turns to face you with a smile. Shall we get going then, love? Alyssa asks, and you nod in agreement. It's time to move back into the hallway, and hopefully to move on to more answers. Which room do you want to enter? The instrument room. There are two tables on either side of the room, low, glass-topped coffee tables, and dainty white chairs to complement. This room is as expensive and delicate as it is alarming, and you feel as though one of the scalpels that are placed in the glass boxes around the room could fly out and slice you at any moment. As well as the several chests, you find that under the glimmering light of the chandelier, the constant glinting off of all of the varying metal surfaces has been forcing you into a squint. As you rub your eyes, Alyssa folds her arms. What do you think, sweetheart? Should we open the chests or look at something else altogether? Open the chests. With the knowledge of decrypting this mass-based riddle in your possession, you rush over to the chests, a sense of adrenaline bursting around in your veins at the thought of a working clue. Your fingers fumble around with the metal flaps of the treasure chests. As you look at the chest before you, you turn to face Alyssa. Do you remember the order, darling? Yes, please. Alyssa repeats to you that the order is as follows: elation, grief, sadness, happiness. Don't forget now. You turn to face the chest fully. The tragedy masks before you have no indicative signs, but instead you notice that their expressions vary greatly. There are two happy ones and two sad ones, as implied by the clue and your own judgment. The farthest to the left looks the happiest, whilst the farthest to the right looks the saddest. They are numbered accordingly: 1, 2, 3, 4. The moods alternate. Next to the happiest masks is a mask that looks slightly sad. With your own judgment and the help from the clue you found, what is the order to open the chests? 1 is the happiest, which is elation. You decide to go for the far left chest first. You flip up the small metal flap over the latch and, with a deep breath, you open the lid. Success! Oh, wonderful! Alyssa exclaims in delight, clasping her hands together with bright eyes. Is there anything inside? You lean in slightly more, looking at the dark interior of the chest before you, and all you can see is a small piece of marble, along with a number. What's this? Is this a finger? You pick up the object before you and examine it a little closer. It definitely does appear to be a finger broken off of a sculpture of some kind, and the number next to it says 19. 19, Alyssa repeats, and you look up slightly from the chest. Something about the walls is glinting differently underneath the lights of the room you are currently knelt down in. You decide to move on to the next chest. Which one will you choose? And the next is grief, which is number 4. You choose to unlock chest number 4. Success! Excellent, Alyssa praises, and the lift of the chest swings open. Ah! You both recoil in horror as you see a head inside the chest, but much to your relief, it is only a marble head, slightly battered in recognition and worn by time. You can barely tell who the face is of, but from the length of the hair, which has been meticulously carved off of the sculpture, it appears to be the head of a woman. God, having that staring us in the face was quite alarming. You lift up the head, and surely enough, there is another number beneath it. The number is 9. Alright, so we've got 19 and 9 so far, Alyssa says, racking her brain and scratching her head. You begin to feel a cold blanket of fear in your stomach. This is reminiscent of something you know very well, but Alyssa frowns. What does this mean? You look up from the chest again, ever so slightly more hesitant. You begin to notice that this time, the glinting is definitely different. You try to pinpoint what is going on with the lights, but you can't see anything, no matter how you look up above you. Alyssa has noticed too, but the two of you are too engrossed in opening the next box. Which one will you now choose? I'm gonna do a quick save. This is the slightly sad one, so I'm gonna go with the one that's slightly happy. Uh, a quick load, because that seemed to be wrong. 2. You decide to go for the chest number 2. Success! Good job, Libretto. You did it, Alyssa says with an enthusiastic pat to your shoulders. Her hands grip you warmly as you open the chest, and inside you see a grotesquely realistic marble heart. A heart, eh? I thought these were all off a typical sculpture. I wonder if this was a particularly beautiful work of art to include the heart. You lift up the sculpture heart, intrigued, and find yet another note. A zero, hmm? Alyssa asks and folds her arms. This is awfully strange. Is this a safe code? You decide to open the very last chest in the order, and sure enough, the last number awaited you, along with a marble dagger, blunted at the edges and holding the piece of paper beneath its weight. Zero. So we've got 9, 19, 0, and another 0, she says, counting on her fingers as though they were to make any difference. Does that mean anything to you, libretto? You nod. As libretto pensato, it does mean something to you. 19900. That's my mother's birthday. Almost like a penny dropping, Alyssa realizes the significance of the date herself. About 50 years ago, she says in a hushed tone, without looking away from you. You nod in agreement. You know what the numbers mean, but what the hell did that mean in turn? Your mother, libretto, was that her birthday? She passed away early this year, so she would have been 50, right? She asks in disbelief, and you feel the horrid bite of reality. What on earth is her birthday doing inside these chests? You shook your head. You didn't know the answer to that, and something else that you hadn't noticed from the sheer shock of finding out the significance of the numbers was that all the scalpels and musical instruments were changed. They were now pointing outwards. They were all pointing at you as though were being controlled by ghosts or, more sensibly, machinations. What? Alyssa says in a terrified whisper, seeing the visible amounts of danger you are in. What's going on? The scalpels were sharpened, the instruments of music ready to fly out and hit as hard as they could. You watched them with almost eagle-like precision as you noticed them wobbling in their cases, and you know that they were about to fly out and hurt you. Alyssa grabs your hands and makes a beeline for the door. We're out, she shouts, and just as you narrowly escape through the door, pulling it behind you, you are not able to repress the sensation of a shaking flinch. The sounds of sharp scalpels and syringes and other instruments of pain fling themselves into the door, sticking into the wood with loud twangs and muted thuds, whilst instruments crashing around you inside cause what can only be described as a dysphoric explosion of sound. You and Alyssa cover your ears, huddling together out of the way of the door's immediate vicinity. As the sound begins to wane, you find yourself raising your head tentatively, looking out at the newfound splinters and sharp edges poking out from the force. Dear God, Alyssa murmurs in horrified awe, and you look out in disbelief at the sight before you. You survived the instrument room, but you find yourself with more questions than answers. Your mother's birthday having been locked away, the tragedy mass, the sculpture parts, just what did it all mean? What was really going on in the symphony hall? God, that was a close call, Alyssa breathes out and places her hand on your shoulders. You all right, libretto? Are you okay? Alyssa's sigh of relief seems to be endlessly repeating, and she nods with an enthusiastic animation. I'm all right, as long as you are, darling. I'm glad that we appear to be skating by on the skin of our teeth. Alyssa pulls you into a warm embrace, and you feel the welcome sensation of her perfume enveloping you in its scent. You find yourself holding on to Alyssa tightly in the middle of the lobby's hall, and bury your face into the warm press of her neck. All of this between you here in the Symphony Hall in these last 2 or 3 hours has felt much more intimate than you have ever been in your lives with each other. You find yourself overwhelmed, but refusing to allow any tears to fall from your eyes from the events that transpired, and Alyssa is more than happy to keep you close. She can feel your overwhelmed atmosphere placing you into a chokehold, and you find the comforting hold of her arms more welcome than ever. It's all right, darling. We've made it through in one piece so far. We'll continue to make it through, right? She reassures soothingly and smiles against your cheek. Don't worry. As long as we've got each other, there's nothing we can't get through, right? Water. You lean back in her embrace and smile at her, placing your hands on her shoulders and nodding along with her reassurance. You can tell from her expression that she's scared, too, frightened beyond anything you know she would admit. But with the two of you together, you've gotten through things you never thought you would before. You can do it this time, too. You know full well that you can. She nods brightly and grins. Exactly. So let's press on and find out as much as we can together, all right? Alyssa and yourself make your way back to the lobby, hand in hand. Which room do you want to enter? I guess the pantry is the only available room. You and Alyssa decide to check the last room in the landing that you are stood on and see that the emblazoned metal of the door says pantry. The pantry, as in a food pantry, up here, Alyssa says and scoffs. Why on earth would a... No, no, banquet needs more. I know that's not what it is, you fool. I know. Changed it. Stop interrupting me. You and Alyssa exchange a look of intrigue. You hear a voice from behind the door. The voice does not sound familiar, but it is the voice of a woman, and it is also the voice of someone behaving rather erratically. You can only just make out what she is saying through her mumbles and the muffling of the door before you, and there is a lot of clanging and knocking against things inside whatever this room really is. With an encouraging, frightened look from Alyssa at your side and a noticeable silence now behind the door before you, you twist the golden doorknob to the left and allow it to creak open in a slow motion. "Hello?" Alyssa says, both tentatively and reflectively, despite that you both cannot see anybody inside. How peculiar. I could have sworn we had heard mumbling. The pantry itself is dark, but there is a very dim light that hangs up on the wall before you, which indicates that there was probably somebody in here before you entered from its glimmer. "Perhaps there's another light switch in here," Alyssa says with a frown, before you see her expression go bright. "Aha!" As Alyssa spots the switch, she flicks on another light, and you see that this place really is a pantry. "Well, color me surprised," Alyssa says with folded arms. "I can't say that I ever thought it would be quite as straightforward as this. In fact, something tells me it isn't." The food on the shelves is a myriad of colorful cans and dried meats. There are plenty of seasoning, wine, pastas, and rice. Many imported things lay stored in here, along with the sign that somebody had removed certain items from the shelves. Tinned tomatoes, chopped coriander, herbs of all kinds. You fold your arms and rub your chin in contemplation. Alyssa muses. Is our unnamed chef making a stew or something, I wonder? There are large, unopened wooden boxes in the room, fragile, and "This way up" printed in large, crude red letters on the paneling. You can see that the walls are an unrefined cobblestone, rudimentary in its brashness and undefined brickwork. "Didn't they refurbish this place at all?" Alyssa says in confusion. "So much of everything we've seen so far has been incredibly subpar, to say the least." You had to agree. This room was very much looking as though it was still the same from before the refurbishment of the building, but perhaps most noticeably of all, with the addition of extra light in this room, you can see a trapdoor in the corner of the room, and you can also hear that somebody is down there. You and Alyssa both feel a chill up your spine upon looking at the trapdoor. "Libretto, do you see that?" Alyssa asks cautiously. "Should we see what's inside?" With the mysterious chef lurking in the depths beneath you, you decide to descend down into the darkness with them and pray that you don't find yourself in further danger. The first thing you do is cover your face immediately as you gag, and the second thing you do is feel your eyes widen in horror as your eyes are met with the sight of your surroundings. You and Alyssa find yourself in a kitchen of vast quantities. A wave of a bad-smelling heat hits you in the face as the trapdoor slams above you. The rush of wind rustles your hair from the bang, and you quickly find yourself clamping your hand over your face. The sound of who knew what was bubbling away vigorously in various large pots, and the variety of stenches that lingered in the air reeked of death and vomit. Alyssa gags next to you. The floor is made of porcelain tiles that look beige from the layers of dirt that reside on them. You think that they were probably white once, but no longer. They are grubby and stained, and there is a matted rug beneath the feet of the rather questionable-looking chef before you. "So that is who is in the pantry back upstairs," Alyssa exclaims in a muffled whisper to you, and you can only look on in horror. The chef in question is busy. She is humming away as she stirs whatever is in the large pot. You cannot see what, as it is concealed by the chef's body blocking your view. You can see dotted around the room what looks like organized chaos. You are surprised to see frayed books, loose notes, and sheets of paper everywhere. Your ears are met with further sounds of bubbles bursting away once more beneath the liquid in the pot she stands before. The lighting in this room is somewhat of a reddish glare. It feels desolate and dangerous. The furniture placed around the room is overly big and misshapen, made of stone or steel, and imposing in its stature. "Oh-ho!" You turn your gaze back to the chef, who turns around to face you, ladle in rubber-gloved hand. You hear them make a noise of curiosity beneath their gas mask and place a hand on their cheek. "We have a guest, too, in fact," the chef gleefully hisses, clasping her hands together. "We have guests! Oh, it's been so long, so long. Nobody ever came to visit us downstairs, even though there was a banquet, a different kind, and now I have reason to make my food, my signature dishes. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. She said you would come. What should I make? The chef's voice fades to a mumble, and they begin to turn back to stirring their pot. The smell of whatever is in the pot, and the oven, you notice further still, is still making you want to retch. "Can you help us?" Alyssa asks, her hand muffling her voice slightly. The chef's eyes behind her gas mask are undressing Alyssa, and both of you look on in disbelief. "Oh, oh," the chef says, tilting her head to the side. "My, you're beautiful. Thick. Yes, you would be perfect." Alyssa closes her eyes in exasperation. "Whatever it is you're thinking, please refrain." The chef shakes her head. "I'm not thinking anything. You would be perfect meat for the banquet, young lady. You ought to try showing more gratitude, you know. Not just any chef can be as skilled as me. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone more qualified to prepare you than me. What will you say?" "Yeah, Alyssa, be more grateful." You turn to face Alyssa, a wry smile on your face, and place your hand on your hips as you tell her off. Alyssa blinks, and the chef claps her gloved hands together. "Yes, yes, thank you, kind soul." She glows. Alyssa looks at you in disbelief. "What are you doing? Do you want her to chop us up?" "Chop you up," the chef interrupts. "No, no, I would not chop." Alyssa breathes a sigh of relief. The chef raises both of her hands in excitement. "I would fillet you." "Will you let us leave?" Alyssa asks in haste, and now looking to a door on the right that you guess serves as the other entrance. "You see, we're very busy. We might attend your banquet later, if you let us go." The two of you move in an unspoken coordinated effort to get to the door. The banquet," the chef says. "Yes," Alyssa insists, and you begin to pat around behind you. "Will you let us go? We must get ready for such a thing." The chef stands motionless as you try to unlock the door subtly with fumbling hands. It is no good. You are trapped, just as you suspected. As the trapdoor of the stairs has now fallen shut, you know that you heard the lock clicking into place. Your only way out of here now is with the help of the chef herself. I need to prepare more," the chef before you says, uninterested in your plight, and with a nonsensical tone wipes her knife on her dirty apron. She goes back to fumbling around in her cupboards, and Alyssa restrains, letting out a second choke and gab from the smell of the pots. What will you do? The chef is surprised to hear your voice so suddenly, and turns around slowly as though she cannot believe she has been asked a question. "You would ask me something?" You nod in response. "What else can you do?" "The banquet," the chef repeats slower than your hesitantly asked question. "The banquet is a feast for the masses, for the mind, for the soul, you know. Goodness, I worked so hard. I tirelessly worked on it, and I worked on it for her. Yes, she told me to gather people, to gather them, and to celebrate her existence with them." They seem more animated as they remember whatever "the banquet" is, picking up a knife from the countertop next to them, and running their thumb along the blunter side of the knife. The lenses of their gas masks glint beneath the flicker of the stove's flames, and they turn around to face you once more. "The banquet is a feast, a glorious feast, pounds for each person, accompanied by water or wine. A woman as beautiful as yourself could easily be a part of such a thing. In fact, and especially you." The chef prods at Alyssa's leg with a pointed finger inside her oven mitt. "Hey!" Alyssa shrieks. "You would be great, but she told me not to do a feast of my own yet. Oh." The chef whines to herself as her lenses glint further still, and you can see that they are getting into an aggressive pose at the memory of being told no. You button your lip. Upon backing up against the door and tugging at the handle subtly, you know that you have made a great mistake. It doesn't look as though this room has any kind of entrance or exit beside the now locked trapdoor and the door behind you. You could try picking at the chef's brain for knowledge, but you have a feeling that wouldn't result in anything good. Your eyes scour the kitchen one last time for anything that might be useful, a knife, a key, a hammer, anything. But to no avail. Much to your surprise, all of the tools that could have been useful are stuck in the sink, unwashed as well as a little rusty, and as far as you can see under the glimmer of the red light, there aren't any keys to be found here. The chef hums to herself, running her butcher's knife along the whetstone of a countertop. "The sounds of this room are horribly eerie," Alyssa says in a low whisper. From the scrape of a knife's blade to the bubbling away at the pots, you're in an agreement with Alyssa. The chef continues humming a song that you feel as though you recognize. though you think it might be your brain desperately searching for any sense of familiarity to the outside. You think that perhaps if you ask nicely, the chef may just let you go altogether, if they are busy anyway. It would certainly appear that they have all of the ingredients that they need. You swallow hard and ask gently into the open air of the room. Oh, you are both still here, the chef replies with a lazy tone of intrigue, and notices the look on your face. What? You can't have any of my food. I changed my mind. Shoo! You think quickly and try to explain to them that you appear to have made a wrong turn. You need to leave this room immediately. The chef pauses momentarily before placing down their knife on the countertop. It is almost as if the penny has dropped, and both yourself and Alyssa feel the palpable amount of terror in the room from the way they aren't turning around to face you. What did you say your name was again? The chef asks coldly. I'll be honest. You decide that in this situation, honesty is definitely the best policy. Even if you lied to them, who could say what would happen to you regardless? It might end up being for the worse for you in the long run. You confess and tell them your name is Libretto. They gasp as they look excited and clasp their hands together. Oh, they exclaim and clap their hands. Oh, I was told if they came here that I had to do something. Now, what was it? They rummage around in the drawers of the countertops next to the metal pot and stove before they pull out a slip of paper. They show it to you. You gasp. I recognize that. That's... Alyssa trails off and puts the hand firmly back over her mouth. Mona's invitation letter. On the back there are scribblings. The chef giggles with delight at the horror on your face. Now, I know exactly why I was supposed to show this. She said you would be horrified, mortified, endeavoring to scream at the thought of someone you care for in peril. She grins and rubs her hands together with the letter still in them. It scrunches, and you wince as you reach out to grab it. The chef notices. Oh, yes. Written on this letter, it tells me that I need to judge you as a human being. Yes, a judge of character. Let me see. Your mind is racing, as is your heart. You know full well that Alyssa stood right next to you, but if Mona came here first and gave a false name, you know exactly what name she'd give, and it isn't yours. What will you say? The chef looks at you with a cocked head to the side and looks down at the letter. A girl? She repeats back to you before nodding. Oh, she said her name was Alyssa. Yes. The gloomy one. She has wonderful eyes. The true look of a haunted woman. Yes. You feel a wave of nausea wash over you at the description of Mona as a piece of meat before the chef sighs. Alyssa, however, is more irritated that Mona chose to use her name as an alias. No, I did not cook her, if that is what you mean. You misunderstand. Misunderstand? The chef scratches her head. They took her away, her and another one. They put them in different places, I believe. What will you ask? What did the other girl look like? The other girls? Oh, she was very beautiful, very pretty, yes. Brunette, dark, the smile of a mother. Oh, and there was a third, actually. She had hair as red as the sun or autumn leaves. Yeah. Alyssa looks at you in concern. The smile of a mother and red hair. Do you think she means? You nod at Alyssa's wordless trailing off, and the two of you begin to realize that the person she is talking about is most definitely Arietta and Serenade. What will you ask? Who took them? The chef does not respond, and instead goes back to the sharpening their knife. They have obviously been ordered to not divulge any details about hints as to where your friends can be, but you also got the impression that something is ticking away inside their mind that is making them want to kill you. You bite your tongue and clear your throat. Boiler room, the dungeon, boiler room, the dungeon. What does that mean? Alyssa whispers. Is that where they are? With nothing more to go on than the ramblings of a madwoman, you decide to believe that Serenade, Mona, and maybe even Arietta are in some kind of boiler room or a dungeon somewhere. But where are those rooms? What will you say? Just ask me what you're wanting to ask. The chef cackles and nods eagerly and with haste. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, this is ever so exciting. First, I get to make a glorious spread, and then I get to meet somebody new, and then I get to dance with the Grim Reaper once more. Knowledge, knowledge, you'll be dancing with swords soon enough. She fumbles around in front of her apron and pulls out a small yellow book. She walks up before you, uncomfortably close, to the point you can smell the residue of whatever it was she was cooking, and you can see her bloodshot eyes through the lenses of her gas mask ever so vaguely. Answer me honestly, okay? She chirps and flicks through the book crudely, staining the pages with the liquid of her gloves. You brace yourself and stare defiantly into the face of uncertainty. First question, she states bluntly. You are crossing a street when you see a middle-aged man drop his wallet on the road as he crosses. You cannot tell if he is poor or wealthy on appearance, but you are in a hurry, and there are no other people around. You think how you could catch up to him if you called out and excuse me. What do? Oh, just call him. That was basic. That was small potatoes. Next question. Pay attention now. The chef waves her knife at you. You find yourself alone in a room with nothing more than a jack-in-the-box, a set of curtains closing out a window, and a glass of water in the corner next to a strange-looking flower. Which will you choose to look at or use? Psh, video game logic. These questions are rather peculiar, aren't they? Alyssa whispers to you. Still, right click is not the correct click. The chef points her knife at Alyssa with a poing, poignant slice through the air. Eek, stop doing that already. Third question, she shouts. You go into your backyard and find an injured, hostile alien. The alien is aggressive and wants to kill you out of instinct, but it is also crying as it wants to go back to its family. You know where its family is, and you could reunite them, but as it is injured, you could kill it before it kills you. Showing kindness might allow the alien to gain a greater understanding of humanity, but that could be your one big mistake. I'm gonna take it back to its family, 'cause I'm nice. Fourth question, the chef booms. You are walking back home from the local store when you hear gunshots behind you. There was a shifty stranger inside the shop when you were there, and you suspect it was them. You have people waiting for food at home, and they are starving. What do? I'm gonna call someone. That's a gun. I don't want to die. And now, the fifth question, the chef declares boldly. You are a cave explorer. One of the people you came with is trapped and injured badly by a monster roaming the cave. What do? I'm going to get help. Finally, the last question, the chef says. Do you think you are capable of killing another person? I think so. The chef makes a noise of deliberation before she falls silent for a few minutes, tapping at her head and folding her arms. She ponders. Interesting. Yes, oh wonderful. You perfectly understand me. Thank you, thank you. You understand this all, the kinds of people, the people within, the grim reaper, the blackest of mages, the executioner, the captain of the guard. Most intriguing, yes. You are ruthless inside, determined to do whatever will give you the most satisfaction, and you will live life on your own terms, as well as other people's lives, too. You're quite a frightening person, aren't you? Oh? Alyssa asks, intrigued. What is that, libretto? Here's the key to a blue cabinet. You'll know when you see. Don't tell her I gave it to you, though. Don't tell her. But good behavior must be rewarded, don't you think? Yes. You pause, unfurling your fingers from around the object that the chef planted in your palm, and look at the dirty key placed in your hand. There's a tag hanging off it. You acquire the cabinet key. Oh, and you should take this again. Darn it! She also hands you the letter of Mona's. You acquire Mona's letter. Now be off with you, she hastens, slapping you and Alyssa on the back. Ow! Go to my banquet now. Hurry, hurry! She hurries over to unlock an unseen trap door beneath her mat with a large, overbearing key, almost a comical-looking set of keys tied to her belt string that had been obscured by her apron, and you know that this is the beginning of your descent downwards into madness. You and Alyssa stand at the edge of the trap door as the chef scurries back to her oven. You exchange a look of trepidation, an oppressive gloom sinking into your shoulders. Was Mona still on this floor? Were the others still even alive? And as for your mysterious assailant, you hadn't heard a word from her for the rest of this floor. Was she not going to make another appearance? Shall we go? Alyssa says, wrenching you from your thoughts as though you have a choice. You nod reluctantly, peering down into the darkness of the stairwell before you, and with one squeeze of Alyssa's hands, she nods to you. Let's get this done. You agree, and turn to begin walking down the staircase before you into darkness, and pray with all your might that you find the people you are looking for. With a loud bang of the trapdoor above closing on you, you find that you and Alyssa have ended up in the stellar staircase. So far, it has been a morbid, unfortunate, and grim experience at the Symphony Hall. You have already gotten through so much, and now it is time to see what lies beneath the curtain of the stage set just for you. You swallow fearlessly as you begin to descend down the staircase into the seemingly unending darkness. As your hand glides along the banister, you retract it fast upon feeling how brittle the wood is. The last thing you need in this situation is a splinter, and least of all to fall over the side from trying to be as safe as possible. The darkness of the staircase is extremely distracting to the point that you have to stop to steady yourself several times from disorientation. You shake your head wearily and try your best to judge the steps as you go. So far, you have not had an accident, and neither has Alyssa, as she makes a point of clinging to your arm quietly. As you descend the cellar steps, you are surprised at feeling more excited than terrified after everything that has happened. Perhaps the symphony hall is having a rather adverse effect on you, or maybe you are just becoming braver in the face of horror, more eager than ever to find out the truth of this place. But it is not a happy excitement. You always knew that excitement had an almost triple meaning, but this was your first time experiencing such a sensation. Nervous excitement surged your tired body, despite that there is, of course, still a part of you that is scared, especially by the looming darkness. Your eyes become slightly confused at being able to see and feel bits of dust and musk floating in the air of the stairwell long forgotten. You begin to wonder if perhaps you have come the wrong way, but this is the key you were given by the chef herself, and this was the only door in sight that accepted this key. The only option was now to press onwards. Alyssa, on the other hand, compared to you, is terrified. She holds onto your arm tightly, tighter than you've ever felt her hold you. You can hear her stumble slightly from the nerves she feels. Whilst Alyssa is usually the bubblier one of the two of you, she has been more reserved since your time in the Symphony Hall. You've been getting a feeling that something is weighing down on her mind, but you don't really know what. Something other than the impending sense of constant doom. As she stumbles again, you decide to talk in the darkness. You doing okay? You turn to face where you think Alyssa is in the darkness, guided by the force of her arm clinging to you and the recognizable scent of her perfume, even amidst the smell of damp rocks around you, and she nods, her hair slightly brushing your cheek. You hadn't realized she was so close to you. You can almost feel her lips brushing against your skin. I'm fine, darling, really. I'm just a bit out of my depth here, I think. She replies, the darkness is ever so distracting. Really, how are two talented women like us supposed to find our way down the stairs without breaking both of our legs? Though if that doesn't give us good fortune when we make our debut together on the stage, I don't know what will. Alyssa chuckles at her own joke, and although you can't help but let out a laugh alongside her, you still want to prod at her mind further. Alyssa is acting a bit off. What will you say? Alyssa stumbles slightly once again. This time, you feel like it was from the nature of your question, and she shakes her head. No, it's really nothing, she says slowly, and you get the impression whatever it is might be something she doesn't fully understand herself. I don't know what it is. Everything feels so strange and traumatic in this place that God, I just can't fully comprehend anything right now, you know? I'm sorry if I seem a little out of it lately, and honestly, darling, given the situation, you're doing remarkably well, actually. What will you say? You feel the offended look on Alyssa's face staring at you suddenly in the dark. Bugging me? Libretto, darling? Come now. You know you'd never be bugging me. I always want to make sure we're on the same page. Alyssa pats your shoulder gently, offering you a grin that you can feel radiating off of her face, even in the darkness. As the two of you progress further downwards, your ears prickle to a sudden noise, and heat rises against your back as the speaker begins to make itself known. Oh no, Alyssa says, and a chill of an utterly haunted sensation on little runs up both of your spines. What could she possibly want to add to the horror of this situation? You look around frantically in the darkness, and Alyssa feels even more frightened after hearing your own panicked breaths. A distorted voice reaches your ears. Hello, my darlings. Having fun? You feel a blast of anger hit you at her taunting. What will you say? The woman at the other end of the speaker laughs to herself. Well, I, for one, am thrilled at the prospect of you enjoying yourself. I spent so many painstakingly long hours fixing up the rest of the hall. I appeared to have forgotten all about the cellar stairways, and the things contained there within. Perhaps I have said too much. Things within? Alyssa asks scathingly, but you can hear the fear in her voice. What are you talking about? You'll find out soon enough, the woman replies nonchalantly. But didn't I say multiple times that I have no interest in you? Alyssa grits her teeth. Then why am I even here? The woman laughs to herself again, and you feel your blood boiling. You'll find out soon enough, Miss Durante. Whatever you say, Maria, Alyssa says with a scoff. The speaker goes suspiciously silent, and you feel as though you just hit a sore spot of her ego. Somebody has been running their mouth, have they? She finally pipes up. I'm not surprised. With two blabbermouths of my employ up on the surface, it's really a miracle that they didn't decapitate you when they had the chance. Alyssa and you exchange a look of confusion in the darkness. Two? Alyssa asks slowly. Yes, two. Did you not know? How interesting. I supposed you missed one back up there, but don't worry. I have a feeling you'll be meeting her soon. Though, I am still feeling a little burned that you knew my name so quickly. Perhaps I have underestimated you, or overestimated some of my most trusted employees. You feel a smug smile rising up into the back of your throat, but you know better than to show it. In the silence that follows, you hear the sound of her opening her mouth, the small noise of lips parting that, when not followed with a voice immediately, is always surprising, and you hear her chuckle with a low tone. You know, her distorted voice begins wryly. I am actually very surprised you didn't kill my dear chef when you had the chance, especially for a woman with as chattering a mouth of her. That's the one you met, isn't it? How did you know it was her? Alyssa asks. Maria ignores her. But I suppose not everybody can be like me. A woman with absolute control is the kind of entity that would be called a god, is it not? Oh, libretto, the kinds of impact I could have had on you, the sheer genius I hold, what a missed opportunity. It could have been tremendous. What will you say? Maria laughs into the microphone. Well, it doesn't matter. My disregard for human life has afforded me many opportunities. You would do well to follow my example. I suppose it was no secret, anyway, regarding my last nine being plastered everywhere. And for someone who keeps chipping in, Alyssa Durante, I'm rather disappointed that one of my failures didn't manage to finish off an even bigger failure like you. Now I can't talk the libretto on my own, she sighs. As you listen to Maria sigh, Alyssa grits her teeth, and you can hear that the frustration is forcing up to a bubble of emotion into her throat. You are a dreadful person, she sees. I long for the moment we find you so we can tear you apart. Maria sighs and leans back in her creaking chair. I have faith that a sniveling, insecure, overbearing coward like you will die soon enough, Maria retorts. But that doesn't matter. Let's put that to one side for now, shall we? After all, I have some very exciting news for the two of you. What will you say? How dare you? Alyssa is thoroughly enamored at the suggestion of your anger as you stand protectively before Alyssa, and you hear her make a noise of a distorted cooing. Oh, did I touch a nerve? I'll have to keep in mind your chivalry, libretto, though you weren't too chivalrous when you chose another woman over her, were you? Wasn't she always at your side, longing for you? Wasn't she always the one there for you? I wonder, are you blind or just full of willful ignorance? You wince from the pointed tip of Maria's words, flinching as though you were being made to roll in thorns. Alyssa's grip on your arm tightens as she speaks. She didn't, that's not how anything was, Alyssa stammers. Maria chuckles to herself triumphantly. You bite your tongue as you feel Alyssa look away in anguish. You have no more time for these word games, and you tell her as such. Maria doesn't waste any time and leans into the speaker. Listen close. Prepare to listen even closer throughout the floor this time, libretto. You know, really, I was merciful on you the last floor. What does that mean? Alyssa retorts back. You listen and feel apprehensive at the silence that follows Alyssa's statement before you hear Maria's distorted reply back. You didn't even get to hear my beautiful song. You do not have time to reply with whatever you would like to say because over the speaker comes the most melodious, haunting song you have ever heard. Maria cackles to herself. Enjoy every single thing this songs bring out to you, libretto, because you won't be the one reaping the gifts it brings. You listen as the speaker clicks off and Alyssa next to you has already let go of your arm. No, she begins, and you can hear her panicked breathing. What is this? An intermingling combination of violin, clarinets, horns, and strings come together in perfect harmony. Their harmony is ominous at best. The notes sound as though they were intended to be beautiful, soft, meant to be notes that audibly glide along the strings and metals, like polish over a smooth surface. Your eardrums soften to the notes you can hear, and you feel strangely soothed by this rather unusual melody. But your security doesn't last for long. As the song progresses, you can distantly hear the faint sounds of instruments increasingly out of key in the background. The same notes, always out of key and out of place, but somehow it almost complements the harmony of the four-note instruments even further. The harmony fades, quickly turning to dissonance, which soon turns to macabre. You feel as though they are dancing shadows inside your mind. You feel the mental strain weighing down on you like a ton of bricks, the pain crippling from the surges of darkness you feel ripping around your body, but physically you begin to realize that after the initial shock, your body feels the same. Your mind is in an almost indescribable pain for a few seconds, but your sense of self isn't corrupted. It is almost as though the song can't bring its arms against you, and you feel as though the cessation won't be happening again. But something is wrong, not wrong with you, and something far more wrong than your mild discomfort. Alyssa? You begin to notice just what it is that is wrong. Alyssa Durant is changed. Alyssa's breathing is rippling and wet, her jaw clenched and her teeth bared. You cannot see her in the dark, but all you can do is hold her shoulders with a sense of urgency. What will you say? It'll be all right. Oh, libretto. Maria shivers down the microphone as the speaker clicks back to her life, and her mouth is so far pressed to the receiver that you can barely hear her coherently over that, coupled with the deliberate distortion. Libretto, it makes me shiver to see how little of an effect this song has on you. The fruits of my labor, the toiling, the prices I pay to do all of this. You could have been such a genius. Maria screams in anger, and you know you need to move. You turn to face Alyssa, who still cannot see in the dark, but you can hear her panicked breathing recede. Libretto, she mumbles, and you gasp. Her arms wrap themselves around your waist, and you have the sudden realization that her lips are within inches of yours. Libretto, why don't you love me? Do you love me? What will you say? What? Come on, let's get out of here, she whispers, her voice a dizzying, lustful mixture that sends a heavy rush through your body. Your hands rest on her shoulders, unsure of where else to place them as she kisses at your face. You look so handsome in the dark, Libretto, so handsome. I would, you know, all the times I've watched you. Oh, come on, come home with me. Be mine already. Jeez, what's wrong? Don't you want me? Please. The atmosphere stirs. A buzzing, hive-like noise reaches your ear, and you begin to realize that it is the vibratory hum of voices. As Alyssa makes you blush into her arms with such sudden lust-fueled rambling, you can barely comprehend what's going on. You can hear crashing from the upstairs. Even all the way down here, something is screaming above you, rushing around, thrashing and convulsing with anger. There are sudden, guttural sounds that are coming from seemingly around the stairwell from an unknown origin. The vile, wet noises are accompanied only by the sound of rattling iron bars and chains, and a sudden, haunting realization that you are surrounded makes your skin crawl. It sounds as if things are beginning to break loose of whatever restraints they held. Are there really monsters in this place? Come on, she keeps repeating, her voice full of need, and you can hear the half-lit expression on her face. Libretto, libretto, stay with me. Alyssa is holding you in place as you try to move, and you can tell she isn't doing it in a way to be obtuse or predatory, and is instead completely bewitched by the melody above. Her arms coil around you like a vice, her face pressed and affectionate up against your cheek. You feel yourself blushing, and she is too, almost as though there is a degree of human consciousness behind the mask the song has placed against her. Libretto, she mumbles under her breath, and you can hear her getting increasingly more hysterical. Stop looking around. Stop looking at anything that isn't me. Come on, be mine, please. Stop making me feel this way alone. Stop. What will you do? You know that down the stairs is where you have to go if there is any chance of being away from the song and living. And the entities that are surrounding you in this forgotten stairwell are angry, angry, forgotten beings that have been down here for who knew how long, were probably as ravenous as they were furious. You felt as though you could cry with the fear you felt in your bones, and Alyssa was no longer herself to compensate for that. You shake Alyssa, desperately trying to get her to snap out of it. Libretto, Alyssa replies through your shakes, crying hysterically now as she clings to you. Don't you love me? Why? Why are you like this? Come on. Come with me someplace private. Come on. Let me give myself to you. I'd kill for you. Kill anyone. Do anything, please. Alyssa's pleading and pawing is giving you an idea amidst the terror, and you know that there is no other way to get her to move from the spot you find yourself in. What will you say? Take me to someplace private downstairs. Alyssa's hysteria turns to a euphoric sense of hysterical triumph, and you let out a loud scream as she swoops you up in her arms. Quickly, quickly, I have to have you, she repeats to herself, and you hope to God that she doesn't trip sprinting down the stairs. Ah, libretto. What will you say? I'm going to I'm going to compliment her. Oh, you find yourself getting into the swing of charming Alyssa, and you can't resist doing it a little more in the midst of your panic. It almost feels cathartic, telling her so brazenly how beautiful she is, how gorgeous, how handsome, but it stops feeling that way when Alyssa begins to slow down in her tracks, and even though you cannot see her in the dark, you can practically hear the swirling in her eyes. Libretto, hearing you say that, it's enough to make me want to die. You can feel her grip on you loosening. You need to pick her back up into moving and fast. What will you say? I'm going to say, save. Because what I'm about to do is going to get us killed, undoubtedly, and it's going to be worth it. You're so handsome. It's amazing that I never saw that in you before. You know full well that any more compliments and Alyssa is not going to move at all. Despite that, you can't stop the words from tumbling from your lips. It's the honest truth. Seeing her in so many different lights in the hellish symphony hall makes your heart race. Alyssa's arms cripple beneath the weight of your body as you compliment her, and she pulls you into her arms. Libretto, she begins, and you find herself somehow giving up at the idea of a coherent escape. She kisses you hungrily, and you can't resist her, even in the middle of this place. Your hands bunch up in her hair, and she wraps her arms around you, rubbing at your back as you kiss, and she moans against your lips. You can feel that the song has made her utterly insatiable. You try your best to tear yourself away from her lips, pulling at her hand to follow you, but she appears to be in a stupor unlike any other. The monsters are hammering down the stairs, and you find that you cannot move her. Your plan has failed. The monsters swoop in, and as you let out a scream of pain, you hear horrible tearing noises of flesh before you, and soon you feel the pressure of your skin break from the sharp teeth of those that have you in their grasp. Your vision fades to black in the midst of your anguish. Death has come for you. Game over. And I did it all on purpose. Teehee. Oh, actually, I think I'm gonna call it for today. I'm getting a little hungry, and I definitely want to go eat something. So I'm glad for everybody who came by, and I hope you enjoy this part of our story. This is a very long game, so we're gonna have a couple more of these ahead, and I might change it to doing this once a week instead of twice a week. Um, but I still really like it, so I'm not quite sure about that decision yet. Anyway, thank you so much for stopping by, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.